Today's episode is with a previous software engineer working in product and tech with over 7 years at Yelp and Uber. He's the current co-founder of Replo, Shopify without the dev time. Replo unlocks ultra customizable landing pages for serious e-commerce teams. Please welcome Yuxin Zhu. Thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Appreciate the time. Thanks for having me. We found out we're not too far away from each other. You're like 15 minutes away from me, so could have done this in person.
We both live in relatively unknown towns in California. So
yeah, it just like in the East Bay, so a little outside of San Francisco, but that was fun. So
we both
here,
got San Francisco on calls.
Yep. We're gonna talk about landing pages. We're gonna talk about design. We're gonna talk about Shopify today. So I wanted to start with why Replo, you guys wanted to focus on Shopify. There's a bunch of platforms. There's a bunch of different industries. Why Shopify and why landing pages?
Yeah, I think really great question. So I think we were always we started this company about 1.5 years ago. I've known Noah since my co-founder since Berkeley. So we both went to college together over a decade ago, and we were like in the same dorm. Like we were project partners in class. So I've known him for a long time, and I think like we've always both been really interested in kind of design and technology, and also like enabling more people to build stuff. And like I think there was always this kind of like really interesting thing where it's like, how do we enable people to like build more stuff without like, I think there's kind of this like huge barriers to like learning how to code, right? And like kind of building really cool stuff. And like in the consumer space, all of this kind of already existed. Like Wix and Squarespace have been around for a really long time. Like I've used it to run businesses in the past. Like my first e-commerce store was on Squarespace, right? So that was where everything kind of started. But like, I think as you go more kind of up market and kind of into these teams, it's like I was doing consulting for a bunch of brands like on and off Shopify, and like it would take them like weeks to like launch something. We'd be like, oh, like we have this like amazing idea, like like we have designers, we have like like we can get the assets together, like all right, how do we like actually launch this thing? And then like I go back like 4 weeks later and they'd be like, yeah, like we're still working on it. It's like the struggle, right? And like I think outside of just like even landing pages, just like I think for building stuff online for these teams, it's like there's so many integrations, there's so many different things they need to consider. Like the branding needs to be right, it needs to be like trustworthy, like it needs to be very custom. It can't just look like another kind of like e-commerce store. So that was kind of like the impetus where we're like, okay, this is kind of like an interesting problem. And the reason we chose Shopify, I mean, like we had some background, within Shopify, we had some knowledge there, but I think what was really important for us was like, we could probably build on all these other platforms, but how do we bring value to people really quickly as a small team, right? And like on Shopify, if you imagine kind of like the ecosystem, it's like over 2 million. I don't even know what the latest number is at this point. Like there's millions of these merchants. They're all built on the same platform. The data is kind of structured in the same way. A lot of them are using the same apps. So it's like, they'll use Klaviyo for email. They'll use, Yelp for reviews, or like Skio for subscriptions. So it's like, and these are all things that people want to include in their store, right? It's like you want kind of like all the same basic things. So for us, building it on Shopify was really just like, like how do we integrate with all of these services? Like how do we just like make it really easy for people to build in one place and not worry ourselves with like, oh, like what about this other platform? What about this other platform? Because like at the end of the day, we're still a small team and there's only 24 hours in a day, right? So my opinion on this was like, okay, maybe we can build a platform longer term that's, outside of Shopify, or like, supporting multiple platforms or something like that. But I think focus is like, the thing that like lack of focus is the thing that kills startups, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And like at this point, like we have people, like it's also a small community. It's like everyone's helping each other. Like we've gotten so much support from like, I don't know, like when we like first started building like this as a Shopify app, we were just like, what the hell is going on? Like we don't even know how any of this works. And like we've gotten so much support from people who have been building apps for such a long time. And I'm just like eternally grateful for everything that they've done. So
yeah, no, the support, the community, the ecosystem is something else with Shopify. Lately, even just this week, I think it was, there's at least one, if not two Twitter threads where people like, what's the best landing page for Shopify? And like, I jumped in on one of them, but then like ton of people are just like Replo, 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 and I'm just like, that's so cool. That
Yeah, and
you
people
know,
think it's like sponsored or something, which is like very bizarre. Like I'm like, we don't spend any money on marketing. Like we have a $0 marketing spend. Like and like I mean, when we started building this, like our very first customer, like we actually onboarded during YC, like we didn't even have anything at that point. And they were just like, we believe in the idea, like, like at the end of the day, if this doesn't work out, like, you guys can probably help us rebuild our site, but like, like hopefully this does work out. And like, people were just using it like organically, and they really started to love it. And like, they told their friends about it. And like a lot of this, like all the comments there is like completely organic, which is like completely crazy to me, right? Like I didn't even use Twitter before I started this company. Like Noah, my co-founder, was big on Twitter, and he's like, guys, like we should maybe try out this Twitter thing. Like there's a lot of like e-commerce people on there. And I'm like, Twitter, isn't that like just like about like Facebook? But like I don't know, the community has just been like so good. And like I'm just like, damn, like I like, can I like ship them some swag? Like can I do something? And yeah, we're just like, yeah, like we should probably just try to like keep improving the product and like building new features, and like that's the best way to do it,
yeah, that
Yeah.
that way they'll stay happy. They'll stay be like wanting to recommend it. Then you'll get more people, and yeah, it's just all really
Yeah. I
cool.
mean, it's just a lot of like trust as well, right? It's like when you see someone actively recommending it, and it's not like I feel like a lot of stuff on Twitter is like sponsored these days, right? It's like, like like you have shares in the company, or like you're an advisor, or like you're whatever. And like none of these people are like, like we didn't have any like we still don't have any advisors, right? It's just like we were just like kind of like this, like a basically bootstrap company. I mean, we raised some money, but it was like we weren't like super embedded in the space. And we ended up just building like a relatively decent product, like, like and people really started to love it. And I think there's just so much trust and, like reliance on us building a good product. And I think I take a lot of like responsibility in that. And we're like, okay, we better not mess up. Like, our support better be really good. And our like, stuff has to be like as bug free as possible, right? And the user experience has to be really good. So um every time someone comments, they, it's like I feel the endorsement, but I also I'm like, okay, we gotta like keep doing better.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
It's like
it might
thank
be like
you.
Asian immigrant upbringing or something, where I'm just like, I gotta keep like improving
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting parallel. That's probably obvious, but like that's what e-commerce founders should do. Is just focus on the product, make it good, and then have your first initial wave of customers be the one that like recommend it. Like it's so good or so trustworthy that they go out of their way to share it with friends and family and people on social, right? Like I think that's huge. It's like not everyone who thinks of a product or makes something has this big Facebook spend budget right away. Like everyone recommends every podcast, including my own. Like everyone's just, oh, yep, Facebook ads. That's how you acquire new customers. Like, but not at the very very beginning. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of people giving like hot takes on Twitter and LinkedIn all the time about like this is like the prescribed way to like, build. I mean, not just like software, but like e-commerce, and like even just like, I don't know, on LinkedIn there's like people like prescribing like how to live your life, right? And like there's not like a one size fits all. And especially like people are at different stages of life and at career and company building, right? And it's like there's not like a silver bullet. And I feel like a lot of people they're like scrolling through LinkedIn at like 1 a.m. right? And they're just like, oh my god, like I gotta like do Facebook ads a certain way, or I gotta like get onto like even like, getting onto Replo. It's not a silver bullet for anyone, right? So you have to kind of think like very critically about like what is the current position I'm in, and is this like thing, is a statement, is this a, hot take gonna like actually help me, right?
All right.
So I think like even for us, like when we get on calls, I still try to meet like every merchant that onboards, like and I try to reach out to them. And like if sometimes I'm just like, dude, this is like not the right solution for you. Like, like here's what you should actually do, and so I, it's like at the end of the day, we're still small enough where like we're kind of very cognizant of like, is this the right product for this market, right? Like, are we building things the right way? And we can probably just like hire a bunch of salespeople and like try to shove it down everyone's throats, and then we'll find short-term success there. And I think there's some parallels there with like a lot of e-commerce companies, right, where they're just like right off the bat they launch a product and they like run a ton of Facebook ads, and like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think the long-term thing is just like, okay, can we organically figure out like if people actually want this thing? And so I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
lot to think about there, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. So you talked about saying, "Hey, we're not the right fit. This is what you should do instead."
Yeah.
So then, why should a brand use a landing page, whether it's Replo or another tool? Like, when and why? Like, what's the point of landing pages?
Yeah, I mean, like Replo, like today actually isn't even used just for landing pages. So like, I think for us, it's really about just like building content like on Shopify, right? And like for most, I mean, e-commerce brands is such kind of like a wide range of like, like sometimes I hop on calls with people and they're like, okay, we're doing like 100 million this year, but like 99% of that is like wholesale. It's like just through like, like orders. And I'm just like, okay, cool. Like probably not it, right? Like, but like, I mean, maybe it could fit, but I think like it's really kind of like for most e-commerce companies, their website, their storefront online is kind of where they're educating users, where they're acquiring a lot of their users, and that kind of experience like is a product in itself, right? It needs to be trustworthy, it needs to be performance, it needs to be well designed, it needs to like reflect who you are as a company, and some of those are tangible and measurable, some of them are not, but I think like within Shopify, like Shopify is also such a wide range as well, right? Like there's companies that are just like, like someone's mom selling necklaces online and they're running a great business. And then there's like business that are doing like hundreds of millions of dollars. And you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they're on Shopify. And like, Shopify is like just such a powerful platform. And like for companies that do have, like a lot of like, branding, like they want to, iterate very quickly on their storefront, like Shopify does become pretty difficult to kind of iterate quickly on. And that's not necessarily, in my opinion, a reflection on Shopify. It's more just like kind of how a lot of these teams have like organically developed, which is like most e-commerce companies, they don't have many engineering teams. They're not running tech companies, right? They're a lot of them are like creative, marketing, kind of design. And I think Shopify is kind of like trying to kind of toe this line between like, how do we, make things work out of the box versus how do we make things really customizable? And for a lot of these brands, even when they're really small, like they want to, have really great branding, want to have really great content. And that's kind of where Replo kind of macro sense comes in, right? Is like, we just made Shopify a lot more kind of flexible on the design and implementation side. So, landing pages is certainly one manifestation of that. So specifically with landing pages, like you want to be able to drive, ads and paid social and things like that into these landing pages. They're, targeted towards each campaign. So for example, if you can have landing pages around, a certain influencer you're partnering with, or a certain kind of like campaign that you're running for like, Valentine's Day, Black Friday, like whatever. And you want to have these like customized pages that are like very focused, because people are already spending so much money on these ads, right? Like especially with the privacy updates and like all the stuff that's going on, like these, cost of running anything paid is going up. Anything even organic is going up. Like you're spending so much time on these creatives, and then like people are landing on these sites and they're like, this looks like crap. Like I don't know, this is trustworthy. Like there's like some subconscious stuff. There's some like kind of tangible stuff, but you want these pages to look really good, and you want people to like, become educated about your brand, become educated about the products. And landing pages essentially kind of like a glorified way of saying like, how do we make the experience of shopping online like really, really good, right? Like from a trust perspective, from a design perspective. And I think that's like very often lost when people are like, oh my God, you need landing pages, right? Like I think sometimes I hop on calls with people and they're like, I was told by X that I need landing pages and therefore now I am here. And I'm like, okay, like let's like actually walk through like your entire like kind of flow and see like if this product is actually something you guys need. But for most brands, like I think building that really custom experience really quickly, like you can go on Replo, use one of our templates. You can work with one of our experts. We have a bunch of agency partners you can work with, and people have gotten out like landing pages in like, from a few minutes. Like we have agencies building like dozens of landing pages a week. Like it's just like hundreds of landing pages are flowing through our platform, like getting built like every week. And like, like I think that's a really powerful thing for brands that, don't have the engineering resources. And even with engineering resources, like they're probably working on like a million other things, right? So I think Replo is kind of an expediter of that process.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
trying to unlock the customizability, the functionality of this, like, what usually takes code and design and development resources and energy and all this time, and you're
Hmm.
trying to, like you said, expedite it so that a generalist marketer like myself can make a half decent looking landing page within a few hours. Like, I wrote the copy one day and then I plugged it in, like, for my Google Doc to Replo the next day, and then it was live the day after that. So I think that's why it's so interesting and cool
Yeah.
for
And
so many people.
yeah, and one of the reasons, like I think like your one of your first questions is like why we started on Shopify and within like e-commerce even, right? It's like there's a lot of like kind of dominant design theory within e-commerce, right? Like certain sites are structured in a certain way. They might not be the prettiest, right? Or they might not be the, sexiest UX of all time, right? But like, like I think there's a certain way of educating users. There's a certain way of educating your customers. There's a certain way of like presenting products in certain verticals that consumers kind of just expect. And like, you know, a lot of times it's like being able to use one of our templates and like, working with one of our partners, like that just expedites the whole thing because you're not like kind of off reinventing everything from scratch, right? You're able to kind of use that to expedite building out landing pages. And like I would say like a large percentage of our brands aren't even using Replo for landing pages. Like a lot of them are using it for user education. They're using it for like a ton of our brands have like physical retail where they need to tell users about like, okay, these are our like store locations and these are like the service offerings that we have in each store. And like it kind of spreads like wildfire, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like for companies that are mostly digital, it's like how do you reach your customers and how do you like within the first like 3 seconds of them accessing any of your like online domains, like how do they become educated about your brand and what the company is about. um
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. I guess other use cases might be, oh, like if wholesale partners, like, here's a page for that versus just the basic contact us page, right? And you could go into more detail on those other
Yeah,
sort of
yeah. I was
things.
gonna say that like maybe this product isn't super useful for wholesale, but then I just remember there's like a bunch of companies that do wholesale that like are customers. So yeah, like people can use it for anything, and it's really dependent on the business as well, right? So it's like, and again, it's just like people have to kind of think critically about like, okay, like this is kind of like the overall kind of goal, the overall like OKRs that like our org wants to drive this year. Like how do we actually enable that? And that could be like emails, that could be like ads, that could be content, that could be landing pages. Like I think it's a whole kind of system that you need to design.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense now. On your LinkedIn profile under Replo, it has Lego blocks for the web, and after having this initial first half of the conversation with you,
Mhm.
I only have used it and heard mostly about it, about for like landing page specifically.
Yeah.
So Lego blocks for the web, this makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Is that a hint at what you guys have intended for it, like now and moving forward in the future? Is it going to be kind of not its own web platform? It's like
Mhm.
you're still within Shopify, but just wanted to like bring that up. I found it interesting. Just was curious if that's like a hint at what's in store.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Legos. Like I that they're a great investment, honestly, but also they're very fun. And so I've always really enjoyed like kind of the concept of like building kind of with Lego blocks, right? And I think I think what we were kind of trying to at there get there is like within even like the concept of landing pages, right? Like there's certain kind of simple blocks that you can drag and drop and build with. So people have been able to build very custom stuff with just like text and like blocks and like images and like videos, and like you can arrange them together into forming like a very kind of pretty nice looking landing page. But there's also other things that like we do very integrated with Shopify, which like a lot of other people don't do. Is like we have specific integrations with like different subscription platforms, like with different review platforms. And like intrinsically you don't really care about like like what size the stars are as much as like what content is on your page. And that's kind of like what we mean by Lego blocks. Is like there's kind of arbitrarily complicated blocks, which are like super useful for e-commerce that we've built out. But there's also really simple blocks, and like being able to like creatively like manage them together and like build something really cool with them that you didn't think was really possible, like without, hiring a developer or like digging into Liquid. Um, that was kind of what we were trying to get at. And like, I think especially with a lot of our templates, like being able to like copy paste across pages, like it's really just like a very almost like creative exercise, right? And people kind of they'll like sign up, they'll like invite the rest of their team, and then like they'll all be like creating different pages together. And that's like really, really cool to see. And I mean, like longer term, like I think like we also want people to be able to bring in their own components because, as a team, we can't really build everything. So a lot of kind of developer open source work around that. And then also even potentially letting, our agency partners, our freelancers build their own templates and kind of share it within that community. And I think like that community aspect plus kind of like the building block Lego-esque aspect is like really cool. Like, I mean, even in our like Slack community, we like started a Slack community a couple months ago, mostly as like a customer support channel. And now it's like almost 600 people in that Slack community. And it's just like, people are just like, hey, like we really want, this integration, this template. And it'd be really cool if like people are able to build those themselves and share it, So
That's cool.
Just some food for thought. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great expansion on top of Lego blocks for the web, and it kind of fits in of like there's these simple blocks, there's custom blocks, advanced blocks, customers building their own blocks and sharing it.
I mean, like at the end of the day, like I think like sometimes people say like, hey, are you guys like a no code platform? And like as coming from kind of a developer background, like Noah and I are both been engineers, software engineers, like product managers at companies. And it's just like you're never going to replace developers, right? Like you're always going to have something custom, like as companies, as we saw into larger companies, like as we work with these kind of larger organizations, like they're going to have a lot of custom stuff. Even within Shopify, like small brands have a lot of custom stuff that they need to do. So like, I think the notion of like getting rid of developers somehow is completely kind of the wrong way to think about it. But it's just like, how do we accelerate? Like if a developer builds something, if an engineer builds something, like how do we actually leverage that? Like build it once and then leverage that everywhere, right? And on Shopify it works really well because when one of the engineers on our team builds an integration, it works magically across like all 2 million plus Shopify stores, right? So it's just a very leveraged way to like kind of build out this product.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That makes sense. That's fun. That's exciting. And it's a big debate in the online space of code versus no code. And it's like, it's not really one or the other.
Yeah,
it's kind of like both.
It's a false dichotomy, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think like a lot of no code tools out there. It's like, I mean, I think like at a macro level, I think the statement that a lot of these things are making is just like, I think as a society, we're almost migrating more towards like users of tools, right? And like, and there's also a lot of dominant design in like kind of how tools get built. So like, for example, like Figma really kind of pioneered like that like drag and drop thing. And then now like if the UX is really similar to Figma, people are like, oh, like I know how to use this. And same with like a million other tools like BI, like analytics. Like if you presented like a caveman with like Google Analytics, they'd be like, what the hell is going on here, right? And like if we got teleported back to like the Stone Age, like we would be like unemployed because we're like our entire job, our entire like professional career is like based on using all these tools, stitching them together. So I think as kind of we move more into the future, I think people like younger than us or whatever are going to be like even more good at using a lot of these tools, and the patterns and the user experience of these tools are going to improve, right? So I think that's kind of like almost the history of computing. Is just like initially you're just like writing like bytecode on a like a processor or something, right? And then like over time you're just like building stuff in like this like amazing web UI, and you're just like, well, I'm not even thinking about like anything computer related. So
yeah, so you're almost trying to like just leverage what's been built before and build on top of that and make it seamless and easy for anyone to kind of be able to access that same power of code, no code, whatever. So
yeah, I mean, I think like even as developers, like there's this kind of like common meme where like it's just like developers going on like Google and like copy pasting code, right? And like that's like actually real, right? Like,
yep.
I'm going on like npm or like, some one of these package managers, and people are like, hey, like, can you build this thing? And I'm just like going online and searching for it if like someone else has already written it, right? Like, and developers can do that because like code is just like kind of transportable, and if you just copy paste code, like generally it will work. You have to like fix a bunch of stuff, but like generally the idea is there. But like that doesn't really exist for like anyone who's not a developer, right? It's like, how do you like even tap into that resource? Even like on Shopify forums, I'd see like someone's like, how do I do X? And then it's like, here's like a giant block of code that you need to copy somewhere, but it's like, where do I put it? Like, how do I use it? I think that's, yeah, kind of the general idea behind it.
Yeah, they're cool. Awesome. So before we hopped on, you were like, I actually have a bunch of hot takes about e-commerce. And I was like, cool, I could just scrap the whole questions and topics and just go there. So I wanted to kind of bring up like which ones you wanted to start with coming into this space the last like year and a half, almost 2 years now, coming from your background of tech and product.
Yeah, it's hard to come up with them like unprompted though,
Yeah.
like one thing that was kind of interesting to me, kind of coming into the space. I think I'd always been kind of sitting on the sidelines, but it was always kind of like like, hey, I have this problem. Like, how do I solve it? Right? It's like, like I was helping a bunch of brands like look at their tech stack and like, figure out like, how we enable like this campaign or like marketing or whatever. So it was very much like I'm a problem solver kind of like first, and just like, okay, what is the problem? Like, how do we solve it? Like, how do we get this launched as soon as possible? And I think like within e-commerce and within every industry, I think there is like a certain amount of like the flashiest new thing, right? And like I think, like nothing kind of like specific here, but I think that was like a really kind of interesting experience for me, because like I think within product world and in the world of like Silicon Valley or whatever, there's always these kind of like waves and like hype cycles of things, and that's also happening similarly within e-commerce. And especially during the pandemic, I think there was like quite a lot of kind of venture capital flowing into a lot of, not only CPG companies like e-commerce companies, but also like software in this space, and like e-commerce enablement software. And I mean, all of these companies have like massive like marketing spend, right? And people are just like, oh my god, we need to get on like X, or we need to get on Y, like we need to get on this like analytics tool or whatever. Like, and I was just like, how is this actually helping your business? Like, you guys are making like negligible revenue. Like, you guys like don't like have one product. Like, how does this help you, right? And I think thinking critically about that versus just like buying into like whatever, the latest thing to come out of like Silicon Valley, or like the latest thing to come out of like some like investors who like, like I think that's something that everyone should kind of think more about. Yeah.
So don't just take the square and put it into your round hole, like try to put it into the round hole, right? Is think about the problem and what the solution actually is you're trying to apply to your problem, your business, your life cycle, your stage, your experience. Like, it's so easy to be like, just do this. All these threads and posts and podcasts are just do this and you'll win. You'll succeed just like me.
Yeah.
And it's a load of shit. Like, it's just not true.
Yeah.
So I see what you're getting at, of like, especially the last couple of years, there was an influx of that because the whole industry as a whole, like, kind of saw the wave and was riding this wave and like increase of people out shopping online. So that doesn't necessarily mean that specific thing you did was the reason for that. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of very successful companies that, leverage, like, I mean, like, certain agencies or certain like technologies or like certain products, like, and I think like it's really overwhelming because there's a lot more people entering this space as well, right? Like, we're definitely guilty of that. Like, we entered the space in the last like year and a half, right? So like a bit of a hypocrite here as well, but like I think it's also really overwhelming to people starting within e-commerce. Is like, you're just like, initially you're just like, oh, like, let's spin up a Shopify store. Let's like, I have this great idea for a product. Like, let's sell it through Shopify, and it's all like fine and dandy. And then you like enter the Shopify space, you like start joining all these Slack channels, and you're like, oh my God, I need like, this thing for this thing. I need like this thing for like influencer campaigns. I need like this thing for like analytics. And it's just like, then you kind of just like freeze up, right? And you're just like, okay, like, oh my God, I need to now go out and like raise money. I need to like hire all these people to like manage all these tools. And it's like, honestly, like when you're starting out, like Google Sheets and like a good imagination is probably good enough, right? Um, so I think like that's something that I've personally observed just kind of like from the sidelines a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So we're gonna start. The captain is turned on like the seatbelt. We're gonna start landing this proverbial air podcast plane.
Yeah.
Wind down here. A couple more things.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of alluded to that Replo is not just for landing pages, and brands can use landing pages for a bunch of things. And you used to help people problem solve for their brands, and then
Yeah.
even when
We
brands
still
are
do.
yeah right
probably,
right.
probably works against our like kind of operating efficiency, but I think as a team we enjoy it. So yeah.
So yeah, so you've mentioned all this stuff. So like, where, what's the problem that a landing page solves? Earlier you mentioned like either for your paid ad campaigns or for your educating customers, but is that the actual problem, or is that just like one? I'm just trying to make sure that
Mhm.
we're explaining the right like solution of landing pages for people.
Yeah, I mean, so at the end of the day, if you're running an e-commerce company, most of your sales are going to come through online, right? Or like a large part of that. And I think the name of the game is essentially you only have a certain amount of time to like make an impression on your customers. And that could be through an email, that could be through text. There's different channels you're reaching these customers at. It's different for every brand. But at the end of the day, they have to come on your site and buy something. And it becomes a numbers game because people will spend money on these different channels. They'll be thousands, millions of people pouring into your site, and you have to get them essentially to convert to an order and to buy something. And not only that, you ideally want them to keep coming back, right? You want them to like really love your product. If your product sucks, it's like, okay, game over. But like if your product is really good, like you want them to keep coming back. And when you're dealing with like thousands of people, millions of people, like it becomes a numbers game. And that's kind of where, conversion rate optimization, all of that comes in, right? It's like at a macro level, looking at 1,000 people coming onto your site from different channels, how do you get as many of them to buy your product as possible? And that is the pure like premise of landing pages. Like that's the whole point. So um, within that, there's like kind of different ways you can leverage these landing pages for content. So for example, like you might want to target you might want to like have your copy be so that like it is educating your users. It could be you're educating them about your brand. It could be educating about them about a specific product. It could be kind of a cross of these things. So it could be educating them about your brand and a product for a certain time of year or for certain verbiage. I mean, ideally, like you have a very consistent story, right? You're basically telling a story of like at the top of this channel, whether that's email, text, you're telling a story about like this is who I am, this is the stuff that we make, and this is why you should buy it. And that story needs to be cohesive. So if you have an ad about like something, like let's say, selling stuff for Valentine's Day, for example, and then like you're selling flowers for Valentine's Day, and then you land on your landing page and there's like literally nothing about Valentine's Day, like subconsciously in the customer's mind, they're just like, what the hell did I just click? Like, what is this website? Like this doesn't correlate to the thing I just saw like 30 seconds ago. And it could be subconscious. It might not be a big deal for one user, but across like many thousands, many millions, it's going to make a huge difference. And at the end of the day, that's going to show up on how much of your product you're selling. So adapting the copy on a landing page, adopting the design, adopting the trust, the how fast the page loads, like all these different factors that like people will throw up on Twitter or like whatever, like that's all in the service of telling a cohesive story. And I think that's like the most important thing for any brand. And that's kind of the piece of the puzzle that landing pages fall into.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they help tell your story. They help connect the dots from ad to the ad brand through the actual the end goal is conversion, which is a purchase.
Yeah.
So
At the
it's
end of the day, everyone's here to make money.
yeah,
So like as much as we want to sugarcoat it, right? It's like we're at the end of the day, we're running a business, except for kind of the nonprofits out there. But like most people are running a business. Most people want to make money. Most people, if they want to, sell something great, they need to make more money than they're spending. And that, needs to show up on converting users on your most important asset, which is your website.
yep. Yeah, no, that's a great way to kind of wrap it up there. We all want to make more money. If you do landing pages correctly, you can make more money if you're good at storytelling and connecting the dots for your customers. So, anything else that's been on top of your mind that you experienced lately? A piece of content that you had a reaction to? Anything to wrap up here with?
No, I think like one observation that we've had as we've like grown very quickly in the last few months is just like, I think there's always this tendency to just be like, okay, oh my God, we need to like hire salespeople and they need to like read off a script. And like, like I think this has parallels within e-commerce, which is like, oh my God, like this 10 people told me they love this product or insert some number here. Now I need to hire like this marketing team and I need to like hire like, ramp up my ad spend. And like, I think there's a certain amount of momentum that you definitely need to kind of like buy into, but there's also a certain level of like, okay, like let's make sure we grow kind of thoughtfully. Let's make sure we're hiring the right people. Let's make sure like we are spending money on the right things and still engaging with our customers at, a level that we feel good about. Because I think when it's like, if people need your product, unless it's just like you have a million competitors and you need to like get yourself out there like in the next like one like tenth of a second, like I think growing your team kind of thoughtfully, like growing kind of what you spend time on thoughtfully is really, really important. Like I think like we're growing our engineering team extremely thoughtfully. We're growing our like go-to-market team extremely thoughtfully. And like people on our team will still hop on calls and like explain what the hell TikTok is like. And it's like, people are like, why are you doing that? And it's just like, it shows up. Like, I mean, if we're being like Machiavellian about it, like it does show up at some point because like people on Twitter will like rave about us for like no reason, like no sponsorships, right? Like it will happen. But I think it's just like also trying to figure out like, okay, are we doing the right thing? Like, is this the right product? Like, how do we improve this product? Like all of these things, I think like it's important to be thoughtful about, and it's not, you shouldn't just kind of like see a bit of momentum. Just like, all right, like we gotta like, release everything and just, we gotta like hire a million salespeople and just like get this out there. So being very thoughtful in your growth, I think like, especially kind of with the macro kind of economics and whatnot, I think they're pretty important. So just like everyone kind of like slow down and and take kind of like a sense of like, if you're focusing on the right things and if you're kind of growing your company and business thoughtfully. So
right on. Yeah, grow thoughtfully, take your time, think before you leap at times. So awesome, man. So thanks so much for your time. Where do you want to point people to if they want to talk to you, learn more about Replo, check out your
app? So you can find us on replo.app. So that's replo.app. And there's a book a demo button there, or you can just sign up for our app and just play around with it. You can use it for as long as you want for free. So we only start charging once you start publishing a page. So you can go around, play with it. People play around with it for hours, sometimes. So people will be like, I spent my entire weekend on this. I didn't do anything else. So it is definitely a little bit addicting. So, but yeah, replo.app is where you would go and find more information.
Awesome. Replo.app. Thanks, Yuxin. Appreciate your time. Thanks for everyone else. Thanks for listening. Leave those ratings, reviews. It really helps the show. Catch you next week.